I was around 16 at the time. I was attending a new secondary school. During my early days attending the school, I met this rather charming guy we could call Jacob. Even though Jacob was quite enticing, he seemed to show an unsettling amount of quirkiness. Not the quirkiness you'll see in those nerdy people who are into Marvel comic books like myself, but the quirkiness that'll make you think that this particular person will be a potential serial killer. Being the pushover and overly friendly person I am, I put that aside and became friends with him. One Saturday afternoon, Jacob invited me to stay at his place. I didn't have anything else to do, so I accepted his invite. Around 20 minutes later, he picked me up and took me to his place since he was able to drive. Upon arrival at his house, I took a look of the property. It was out in the bush, a big property with the main house, which his parents and sister live, and a granny flat around 10 meters from the main house where Jacob lives by himself. I checked my phone for the time. It was around 5 in the evening, and I noticed that I had no reception, which is strange because Telstra, the phone company I'm with, is very good with their reception, and normally I can get decent signals when I'm out in the bush when I go see family. I thought I was in a setting for a classic horror movie, but I humorously brushed it off in my mind. Once we settled into his place in the kitchen living room, he went off to go have a shower. As I heard the water being turned on in his bathroom, I thought I should do a little bit of snooping around. Nothing too privacy invading, just to look at the decor in his place and to see what his room looked like. In the midst of my snooping, I saw various types of things, like his old jersey when I used to play rugby, a few artworks he did since he's an art student, and a photo booth style photo of him and his ex, which I kinda got jealous about since I had feelings for the guy back then. The creepy part though was his room. I stepped into his room and at first it seemed normal, a bed with a nightstand, desk with high-tech computer and camera, stuff like that. But as I looked around his room, a half-open drawer in his nightstand caught my attention. As I looked in the drawer, I noticed something that sparked up red alarms. A big sharp butcher's knife, rope, BDSM-style handcuffs, and a bottle of something that I knew was not lube. I tried to brush it off as Jacob just being, a little kinky, but something in me knew there was something really going on. Maybe because of rumors I heard at school about him doing some sort of messed up stuff. At first I ignored them, but now I'm starting to believe these rumors. Shortly after I heard the shower turn off, I sprinted my butt back to where I was sitting before he had a shower and acted like I was trying to get reception. He came out of the bathroom, dried and dressed. He made an amusing remark about the reception here as he walked up behind to where I was sitting and unexpectedly hugged me and scooped me up bridal style and carried me to his bedroom. These sudden actions made me have a mini anxiety attack and a little bit fearful for my life. As he placed me on his bed, Jacob proceeded to go to his tripod next to his desk and prop his camera on and directed it to my direction. This made my brain say, "Get the hell out of here," as my heart was pounding in fear, thinking that he was going to rape and murder me and film this all on camera to put it on the deep web, since he told me that he visits the deep web frequently. Luckily, in these situations, I was always smart enough to escape, and so I pretended to read a text from my mom saying that I need to come home. I lied to him that my mom wants me to come home and said that she will pick me up. I apologized for my unforeseen leave and bid him farewell before I rushed out of his property once I was out of his granny flat. As I was 1 or 2 streets away, I called my next door neighbor to pick me up since my mom was out of town that night. Once my friend picked me up, I told her some made-up story on why I was here, and she took me home. Ever since that incident, I was scared of Jacob and lessened my time talking to him. After he graduated, I blocked him on all contacts and never talked to him again. That night was the most fearful night I ever experienced, and after that, I do not go to guys' places that live on their own. It was the summer of 2009, and I was fresh out of a marriage that I jumped in too quickly, and here I was looking to find myself again. So I called my 2 oldest siblings that lived in New York City and told them I was coming for a visit. Needless to say, they were elated. I only had to pay for my bus ticket there, and it was rather cheap, and I had a good job at the time, so I was able to purchase on a whim. Gleefully, I packed my suitcase so full I can barely zip it, with all of my favorite summer clothes, jewelry, makeup, etc. I get to the bus station, all is well. The lady at the customer service desk hands over my ticket, and I wait for my bus departure to be announced. Along the way on the bus ride, we made a few rest stops until we got to our transfer station in Philly. And this is where things get weird. Everyone transferring buses get off and a new group got on. I see a lot of strange looking people, but none stood out like this one. This guy had long, straggly brown hair, thick glasses, and a wilderness beard. He isn't smelling bad or, homeless looking. In fact, he looks quite well put together, and he smelled of cologne. But he just had this creepy serial killer lumberjack vibe about him. Whenever I travel, I always take the window seat. It's just my thing, and lo and behold, creepy guy sits right next to me. He starts to talk, and it's innocent enough. I'm not much of a talker by nature, so I listen. He talks about his sister's wedding, stating he had just attended it in Philly, telling me he was on his way back home to New York City. I nodded and smiled. He then said in the creepiest whisper I've ever heard in my life, "I'm going to kiss you now." And before I could respond or react for that matter, he planted his lips onto mine as his scruffy beard scratched my face. I yelped in horror and punched him as hard as I could in his arm. He let out a loud laugh and said that he loved me and that he knew I was the one. I'd never seen this man a day in my life, and I didn't know him from a can of paint. It became very clear to me that this guy was mentally disturbed. Just as I stood up to cross over him and go complain to the driver, a young woman appeared from a few seats behind us on the bus, profusely apologizing, claiming he was her cousin and that he had a mental disability. She offered to trade seats with me, and I accepted. The whole time he's laughing, and his laugh got louder and more disturbing. That was the end of my interaction with them, but at the next rest stop, as I was getting off the bus to get snacks, I walked past their seats and see them making out, whispering and laughing, like what the hell? They were very strange people. I don't know if they were really cousins or not, but I was glad to make it to New York City and see my big brother at the station waiting on me. I ran into his arms, clearly shaken. He asked what was wrong, but I never told him exactly what happened. Nevertheless, he and my sister tried to comfort me, but I wouldn't tell them what happened. I have been a frequent flyer ever since this incident occurred. Even thinking about it gives me the creeps. This is a true story that happened several years back when I was 13. This was a time when I was growing up in New York. We actually had a summer house on Cape Cod and spent every other weekend there if we could. Cape Cod is a peninsula off the east coast of Massachusetts. It becomes very busy, even crowded, during the summertime. But during the winter season, it becomes empty. The majority of houses in our area are owned as summer houses. So during the winter, the houses are still there, but the people are not. In contrast to New York, there are only street lamps on the single main road in this town. The main road goes from the town center to the beach. Aside from this road, all the others are dark and very black at night. Also, Cape Cod extends out into the Atlantic from the mainland, forming a bay called Cape Cod Bay. Not only can one watch the sunrise over the Atlantic Ocean, but can watch the sunset over Cape Cod Bay on any given clear day. Another effect of being surrounded by ocean is that there's very little man-made light at night. The stars are so clear that the Milky Way is clearly visible, spanning across the sky on clear nights. This story happened during the vacation period between Christmas and the New Year. The Christmas celebrations were finished, and there was plenty of leftover turkey and pumpkin pie. We got a bit of cabin fever with all the Christmas food and family on one evening. So my older sister, who is 7 years older than I, 20 at the time, came up with an idea to take a walk to the harbor, which was about a 20-minute walk from our house. The harbor can be fun because we can walk out on the docks and walk among the boats. While I was a bit creeped out to walk around the deserted beach town on a cold winter night, I also thought it'd be fun to get out of the house and maybe even be exciting. We headed out. Across the street from our classic Cape Cod cottage is a field with a forest at the other end. At nighttime, I also have a little fear that there could be a psycho watching from the tall grass. Perhaps he would have an axe. But while it kept my nerves wary, I knew it was my imagination. But still, icy wind blowing on tall grass is a perfect setting for some horrors. And to this, A moonless sky with a million sparkling stars and the Milky Way above, and the horror setting is at the level of Stephen King. So we walked out to the main road, went a bit down the road, and then turned to walk down a side street that leads to the street that dips downhill towards the harbor. This side street runs along the dockside of a long hotel. It's more like a two-level motel, painted light yellow that has a pool. It is well situated in town, so it can be full of life during the summer. On this December Eve, the hotel is closed for the season, completely dark, and several windows are covered with plywood for protection. My sister mentioned that a hotel that spans an entire block, but is partially blocked, reminds her of a horror movie, like one of those slasher films where the characters make all the wrong decisions and walks into the worst of dark places just to find their worst nightmare come true. At the end of the street with the hotel, we continue to the left, which is a long road downhill through the woods to the harbor. This isn't a pure forest because there are houses set back from the road with an occasional driveway. Many of the driveways have reflectors on a rock, a fence, or just standing on a metal stick. These reflectors reflect back the headlights from cars. I mention this because we could not see any of them or anything. It was pitch black in the wooded area, and the road seemed to continue into the black. Come to think of it, we had not seen a single car or a single person or a single sign of life since we left our house, and my nerves were on edge. I was only 13 at the time, and although my nerves were screaming, I tried to stay calm because I wanted to seem tough to my sister. The woods along the side of the road were particularly nerve-wracking. The trees come right up to the asphalt on each side of the road. They provide many opportunities to hide someone or something. The houses beyond the woods were dark because rarely did vacationers come here in the winter. I started to notice that my sister was also starting to lose her nerves, and that's when I felt it. I felt a flush of energy move up the back of my neck. It makes it feel like the hairs are sticking out on end, and this is a feeling I get when I'm being watched. It's hard to describe this feeling, but I still get it today. Sometimes when someone is looking at me from behind, it's either some kind of sixth sense or it's just my imagination working with some intuition. We were now midway into the wooded area, down the hill towards the harbor. I was starting to lose my shit and was just about to stop pretending not to be freaking out and tell my sister, "Let's go back," when she suggested it. She said, "It is late, maybe we don't have to go all the way out to the harbor?" I replied back, "Well, plus it's kind of creepy and dark down there." The back of my neck was shivering, and I felt my body shudder as it wrestled between acting relaxed and flipping the switch to flight or fight. My sister replied, "It's very creepy, come on, let's go back to the house. We can see the harbor tomorrow." So we turned around and she grabbed my hand and we started walking fast back up the hill. I remember that she held my hand so tight it hurt, and my sister never holds my hand. I can't think of another time she did this. And this is where the story takes a deep dive down the rabbit hole. As we got towards the end of the wooded area, my sister screamed out, "I've got a knife and I'm not afraid to use it." And she did not lose any rhythm of her fast walk while saying this. We crossed the street now and headed onto the street with the backside of the closed two-level motel. My sister continues speed walking and looks back. She let out a little panic noise and looked back again, and then commanded me, "Don't look back." I was utterly freaking out at this point. Aside from the eerie vibe of the dark, empty street and my own inner panic, I had not actually seen anything out of the ordinary, with the exception of my sister's completely insane behavior. Then she said, "When I say run, you run, okay?" "Okay." We were almost at the main road, a block from our street, and she said, "Run!" We booked it, and she let go of my hand, and both broke into the best sprint we could do. I could hear our footsteps banging the asphalt, and could also hear several other footsteps behind us in the distance. We cut around the grass area to a shortcut toward our street, and ran through the front yards of our neighbor's house to make a beeline for the front door of our house. We made it. We both ran in and locked the storm door, which is mostly glass. I was panicking, but not sure if there was anything or if we were just going crazy. It was a strange transition from outside, which was terrifying, to inside the warm lit house, which seemed safe. I was questioning what happened in my mind. I could sense that my sister was also questioning herself, whether there even was a threat, or we both just lost our minds out there. I asked my sister what she saw. She said there was a man that was standing at the edge of one of the driveways. We walked right by him on the way back. She said that when we were behind the hotel, he crossed the street and was following us. She said he was looking right at us, and although we were walking very fast, he was gaining on us. She explained that it doesn't make sense that a man would be standing out there in the dark, wooded area. Honestly, I don't really understand what happened that night. I'm not sure how much of what my sister said was true, if she was seeing things or not. But one thing's for sure, I realized that I prefer walking to that harbor during the day.